Okay, so now talking about current day stuff. Beginning with the first three bullet points are accomplishments that we've already learned about in this class. Just three quick facts from the founding of the first European towns in the US that have been continuously occupied in what ends up becoming the United States, St. Augustine, Florida, in 1565, to the fact that Latinos or Hispanics have fought in every war in US history, to 20th century, and just a reminder of the fact that they have also fought and earned a disproportionate number of Congressional Medals of Honor. So the first three bullet points are things we've learned about before, and the last three bullet points are new things I haven't talked about before. But it's just about, again, Latino accomplishments. One is the first US-born Latino astronaut in 1991, Sidney Gutierrez. Right here. How popular and common Latino food has become. So much so, for example, that tortillas now outsell bread. That now salsa outsells ketchup. And then there are foods that are just, again, so common that we might not even think of them as Latino in origin. For that, I'm thinking of, I don't know, something like nachos at ballparks, for example. Or there's the history of the Caesar salad. The Caesar salad, associated with Italian food, was first created in Mexico, in Tijuana, on close to the U.S.-Mexico border, by an Italian person there, a person of I forget if he was Italian or Italian descent, but it's just an interesting aside that it was created in Mexico, not in Italy or in the U.S. So the popularity of food, there's a popularity of music, Latino music in the US becoming increasingly mainstream. One example of that could be, the fact that Bad Bunny is going to play the Super Bowl halftime show this coming Super Bowl, for example. Not without backlash, but still. Or the first Latina Supreme Court Justice, Sonia Sotomayor. Another example of Latino accomplishments in more recent times. Then there is the size of the Latino population. 62 million people as of the last US Census, 2020. Today, halfway through the 2020s, I think we're at like 68 million, but I'm not going to test you on that. I'm going to test you on 62 million. 62 million puts Latinos at 19% of the US population. So almost 1 in 5 people. Latinos have been the largest racialized minority group in the US for over 20 years, since 2003. This also speaks to US self-identity. I think for about the last 200 years, for most of US history, we've identified as a country that demographically, racially is black and white. But for over 20 years, the largest racialized minority group has been Latino, not Black, or I should say, not African American, because some Latinos are Black. And so, yeah, I think we need to start identifying as a country, acknowledging the size of the Latino population with being almost 1 in 5 people, as not just a very small niche, kind of special group or kind of irrelevant group for how small it is. Being about 20% of the US population is an integral, significant part of the US population. Now, breaking down Latinos themselves, about two out of every three Latinos is of Mexican background. The next most common background of Latinos is Puerto Rican. 10% of Latinos are Puerto Rican or of Puerto Rican background. Then third place, Salvadorans and Cubans are tied for third place with 4% each. And then there's 20%. So, even the others, the ones that are not Puerto Rican, Salvadoran, Mexican, or Cuban, 1 in 5 Latinos is not one of the 4 major groups. So that's a significant number of Latinos in the US are not from the background of one of these 4 major groups. So significant number of Latinos don't fit into one of these 4 boxes, labels, categories. Another thing to know about the Latino population, a big thing to know is the fact that they are younger. And you see how young the Latino population is by what a big percentage they make up of children in elementary schools. So they're less than 20% of the population, but they're 25%. 1 in 4 children in elementary school in the US today are Latino. And those minors are now growing up and graduating college. Between 2010 and 2023, the number of Latino college graduates grew by 125%. So while this age group is in decline right now, a larger percentage of them are Latino. So Latinos are going to be a larger percentage of college age young people, of the people on college campuses. And college campuses they're going to need to adjust to changing demographics as well. Here's a couple other ways of, pointing out the youthfulness of the Latino population. One is by looking at median age. The median age of Latinos, based on 2019 numbers, the median age for Latinos was 30. The median age for non-Hispanic whites was 44. Continuing with the youth, I'll skip this bullet point for the moment. The most common age of non-Hispanic whites is 58. The most common age of Latinos is 11. And unfortunately, I'm not sure what year those specific numbers were from. I forgot to write it down there. Another aspect that relates to why they're younger has to do with Latinos having a higher birth rate. And so the growth of the Latino population since 2010 is mostly from birth rates, not from immigration. And so this means that even if you deport a lot of immigrants, most of, again, most of the growth is from the birth rate, not from immigrants. Not that they're entirely separate. All right, so those were US numbers. How about looking at Wisconsin? Based on the last census of 2020, Latinos in Wisconsin were 7.6% of the population of the state. And that is when they became the largest minority group in the state with 447,000. So again, the US needs to update their sense of who the US is, and the state of Wisconsin does as well. And, with, again, the dairy industry, this was mentioned before in the immigration lecture, with the dairy industry being such an important part of Wisconsin identity, and this industry not being sustainable without the Latino population. 80% of Wisconsin dairy labor is immigrant. The overwhelming majority of that is Latino immigrant. And this includes both documented and undocumented. So from the US to Wisconsin to Eau Claire. In Eau Claire County, 25 years ago, Latinos were 1% of the county's population. 10 years later, they grew by 100% to 2%. And then 10 years after that, in 2020, they grew by 50% to be 3% of the county population. So, these are small numbers, 1, 2, and 3, but they are large rates of growth. So for example, in those last 10 years, the rate of growth for Latinos was 50%, whereas the rate of growth for the county in general was 7%. So it was a growing county. But, a lot of that is Latino. Just south of Eau Claire, one of the counties south of Eau Claire is Trempealeau County. And you learned about Trempealeau County in the documentary that you watched, I think last week. Trempealeau County is where the cities of Arcadia, Independence, and Whitehall are. And the huge rate of growth started in the early 2000s. From 2000 to 2010, there was a 600% growth in the population. In 2020, Latinos in Trempealeau County make up 9% of the population in that county. Moving on to politics. So this is a chart from 2017, so not very recent. But it is showing that there were 6,600 Hispanic elected officials in the US, and 377 were at the federal and state level. There were 4 senators, 34 US representatives in the House, And so HEOs means Hispanic elected officials. This chart's from 2017. And then updating it, today, Latinos make up 10% of Congress. And so the numbers have been growing, and there are thousands of Hispanic elected officials in the US. But there is, if you look, if Latinos make up 19% of the population, but are only 10% of those in Congress, then they are significantly underrepresented in Congress. But those numbers are growing. Economics, looking at GDP. So the United States has the largest economy in the world. This is from an article released in 2025 using the most recent numbers, which are from 2023. So in 2023, the United States had the largest economy in the world, the largest GDP, followed by China, Germany, and Japan. Latinos in the United States by themselves would make up the 5th largest economy in the world. Just Latinos in the US by themselves. US Latinos have a GDP of 4.1 trillion based on 2023 numbers, which is larger than the economies of India, the United Kingdom, France, Italy, Brazil, or Canada. Just the Latinos in the US. And this has been growing during the last 15 years significantly. If we look at Latino overall growth from 2010 to 2023, Latino GDP grew by almost 75%. The US in general GDP grew by almost 33%. And so and non-Latinos by 27. So it's showing that a significant portion of US economic growth is due to the success of Latinos in this country. So it's not necessarily a zero-sum game. It turns out if 20% of your population is doing well, that helps the whole country as a whole, not just them. And so they're important drivers of growth of the US economy. The future. Well, Latinos are projected to become 29% of the US population by the middle of the century. And so right now they're 1 in 5. By 2050, they'll be between 1 in 4 and 1 in 3. And so the Latino population, it's not that the US can't have positive economic numbers without the US Latino population doing well, but because the US Latino population is a huge percentage of the US population and is projected to continue to grow, it's hard for the US to succeed without Latinos succeeding as well. We need as many people in the country succeeding. And if Latinos aren't doing well, then that's a significant part of the US not doing well. And so again, Latinos are disproportionately younger. So without Latinos in this 18 to 49 age demographic, there would be a decline over the next decade, which would be a disaster for the funding of things like Social Security, Medicare, infrastructure for the country, and for filling jobs that need to be filled in the future. Meaning, because Latinos are a young population, that means they'll make an increasing percentage of the people that are working age population. Whereas the big demographic bulk in the US population without Latinos would be the baby boom, which are overwhelmingly retired and on Social Security. So without the young working people, they wouldn't be able to have support the Social Security system and Medicare for those that are retired. And then there's this irony that the people who are retired are the ones most likely to vote for things like the deportation of Latino immigrants and so forth. So they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot, and don't see it. This also reminds me of this fact that many first world countries in the world are seeing smaller birth rates, where people are waiting longer to have children. And even once people have children, they are having less children than they used to. The problem with declining populations is that capitalism requires constant growth in order to continue doing well and continue growing. Um, and so there's this irony that first world countries aren't having enough children to sustain their population, which is going to hurt their economy. And they have plenty of people in other parts of the world willing to immigrate to them, but a lot of them are very hesitant to allow immigrants to move into them. When immigrants are an important part of the solution to their problem. Now, some people that don't want to allow immigrants in, instead want to, are saying like have children. I'm thinking of like Elon Musk trying to have 15 children or more. At least he can afford them, I guess. But, we're in a situation where the demographics are not adding up to this exclusionary policies of not allowing immigrants to come in when immigrants are an important part of the solution for continued growth and for future economic success. I want to play this short video it's an old video from 14 years ago called The New American Reality, but I like it, find it useful. So again, this is old from 14 years ago, but the ideas I think are still applicable. And the numbers shared, if anything, are larger than they were back then. All right, so one of my goals is to help prepare you so that when you graduate, it doesn't matter what part of the country you move to or get a job in, that you're going to be better prepared and better informed uh, to live and work in that place. Because chances are you're going to be increasingly exposed to more Latinos, and I think it's beneficial for everyone to know more about their history, their past, and their significance to the United States currently. So hopefully you feel better prepared, more informed about the significance of Latinos to the United States. I again remind you to complete an evaluation, and I don't want to forget to thank you for taking this class. And yeah, anyone have any comments or questions?